I'm going to start with the obstacles in no particular order. Number one is obstacle, lack of education. And that's kind of obvious, but reading is a skill, right? It's not something nobody here was born and then went out in the waiting room and just started reading magazines, right? It's a skill that's learned. But the challenge is, how old were you the last time you took a class called reading? Not like a college literature class, but a class called reading. How old were you? 6, 5, 7? So can we agree that the difficulty and the demand has increased a lot in terms of your reading needs? But how we read it is still that of a 5, 6, 7-year-old. And that growing gap creates something called information anxiety, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. For those who employ individuals, it's the largest line item for any business is payroll, right? Is human capital. The average person in their job reads about 4 hours a day. You're reading research, you're catching up on emails, social media, whatever you're reading, newspapers, magazines, books, whatever. 4 hours a day, processing information, reports, proposals, whatever you're reading. 4 hours a day. That means half of someone's salary is being paid to read. Right? So if someone's getting paid $50,000, they're being paid $25,000 just to read, something ubiquitous. So if you double your reading speed, you say, you're even more employable. Like when you go through this and put this even on your resume, that you've gone through, our courses. And I've trained teachers in the top education systems in South Korea and around the world. In Finland, right? They take a personal interest because nobody teaches in school how to learn. It's just what to learn. Math, history, science, Spanish, but no classes on how to learn. Second one is a big one. Number 2, lack of the F word, focus. How many of you have trouble focusing when you read? Will that slow you down? Will that affect your comprehension and your retention? Of course, right? And I'll share with you what the real key for focus is, because again, we have students in our quick reading program in every country in the world, so we get a lot of feedback. If I asked you to read faster, what do you think what would happen to your comprehension? What would happen to your comprehension if I asked you to read faster? Everyone says less, go down, decrease, right? In actuality, because we have so much data, the fastest readers generally have better comprehension. So I want you to take that in, because I'm about to teach you how to read faster. But if your remember mindset, motivation, methods, you won't do the method I'm about to teach you if your mindset is, if I read faster, I'm not going to understand. Does that make sense? And here's the reason why. Your brain is this incredible supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program it will run. So you have to think about your talk that you have for when you read. What are you saying to yourself? And by the way, if you're talking to yourself, you're not really reading. Is that fair? And this supercomputer, when you read, this is how most people read. One word at a time. Now, did you get a shift change like when I started talking? It's hard because I'm from New York, right? So it's hard for me to talk that slow. And if I talk that slowly, what would happen? What would you experience if I talk this slow? What would your mind do? You would lose focus. It would be torture. You would be disengaged. You would be distracted. Your mind would wander. You would have anxiety. You'd be bored. You'd fall asleep. Now, aren't those the same things that happen when you read? So what I'm saying is when I talk slow, I can't even talk that slow. When I talk slowly, your mind will naturally wander. You'll fall asleep. You'll think about other things. You'll lack focus. You'll be bored. Isn't that how you experience reading today? You lack focus, you get distracted, you think about other things, you fall asleep. How many of you use reading as a sedative? Let's get really raw. How many of you have a book by your nightstand, by your bed, that you've been reading an embarrassingly long time and use it to fall asleep? That's not the association you want to have to reading, because how you do anything is how you do everything. If reading puts you to sleep, that's a challenge. So what's the opposite? So notice you're not going to have the comprehension because you're reading too slow. But the faster readers, they have no time to wander. If you don't give, let me say it a different way. If you don't give your brain the stimulus it needs, it'll seek entertainment elsewhere in the form of distraction. This is a core principle. If you don't give your brain, this incredible supercomputer, the stimulus it needs, it'll seek entertainment elsewhere in the form of mind wandering, in the form of distraction. It's kind of like reading slowly is like riding a bike really slow. Can you ride? What happens if you ride a bike really slow? You're gonna fall. You're gonna wobble, right? And that's what most people are doing reading. Let me put it a different way, because I use a lot of analogies, a lot of metaphors, because that's one of the ways to accelerate your learning, through stories. Like, how would they pass on information, back before there were books and printing presses? It would be stories around campfires. It would be parables, right? And what it does is it connects something you don't know to something you know. Like when I talk about a thermometer and a thermostat, how a thermometer reacts to the environment, but a thermostat sets the environment, we understand that instantly. All learning, you want to know fundamentally what learning is? You're taking an unknown and you're connecting it to something known. You're taking it to something outside of yourself and connecting to something inside. Because like math, let's take math in the spirit of Scott Flansburgh. Have you ever been sick in school, like maybe for a week or two, and you miss math, and then you come back and you have no idea what they're talking about because everything builds on the next thing, right? Because then you're trying to connect two things that you don't even know. You don't know sine, you don't know cosine, you don't know tangent, so there's no connection. It stays outside of you. But when you can link it to something you already know, then it becomes more of your permanent network, if that makes sense. But going back to the metaphor, I want you to imagine driving a car and you're going very slowly. You're in your neighborhood. Are you really focused on the act of driving? Have you ever got to work or got home and you don't even remember the trip there? Has anyone done this before? Right? And the idea here is you're going so slow, you're not focusing on driving. What are you doing? You're drinking your coffee, you're texting, which you know you shouldn't, multitask and do that. You're listening to radio, you're singing a song, you think about the dry cleaning, you're talking to somebody in the car, right? You can do 5 different things because you're going slow. Let's say you're an F1 racer, right? And we train a lot of race car drivers, improve their reaction time, their thinking speed, right? Because those milliseconds count. If you're taking hairpin turns, you're going 200 miles an hour, are you more or less focused? Are you thinking about the dry cleaning? Are you trying to text? Are you checking your hair, your makeup, right? Are you drinking coffee? Are you talking to anybody? No, you're not doing any of that. What are you focused on? 2 things. What's in front of you and the act of driving. That's why faster readers have better focus, because their mind's not wandering and they have to focus on what's in front of them and the act of actually reading. Does that make sense? All right. And so the idea here, and obviously there are limits, and why I say limitless is nobody's really sure on how fast you could read, right? But here's the thing. We could all exercise our body and get stronger, right? Same thing with your reading muscles also as well. So I want to put lack of focus here, because if your mindset is, if I read faster, I'm not going to understand. If you read faster, you'll have better focus. And because you have better focus, you'll have better comprehension and retention. Now, the third one, and I'm going to give you ideas on how to overcome this. This is the hard one to overcome. And that's why our program is our quick reading program, which many of you have, that are reading 800 words per minute. I thank you for graduating that program. This is the thing that it's hard to fix today. It really takes a few weeks because it's a habit, right? But I'll tell you it anyway. It's something called subvocalization. What's subvocalization? I'm going to show you a slide, and it's going to be a simple phrase. And I want us to do 2 things. I want us to read it out loud together. That's the important key. Read it out loud. And I want you to try, as you're reading it out loud, to count the number of F's. F is in focus. All right? Are you ready? But you have to read it out loud. Are you ready? Okay, show the slide, please. Is it up? Okay, let's read it out loud. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. All right, how many F's are there? I see 1, I see 0, I see 2, I see 3s, mostly 3s, 4, 7, 8. Wow. All right, so everywhere from 0, 8, no, 10. All right, everyone from 0 to 10. Now, are we all looking at the same slide? I'm going to give you one more try. The key to get this is to read it out loud. Are you ready? Here we go. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. All right, tell me your final answer. Okay, no zeros, that's good. 2. All right, 80% of people still seeing 3. I see some 4s, some 5s, some 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I see everything from 2 to 8. Okay. How many Fs are there? All right, I'm going to show you again. Does everyone count? How many Fs? How many Fs are there? There are 6. Now, if you didn't get it the first time, I don't even want to address the 7, 8, 9, and 10s. But if you didn't get the Fs the first time, where were they hidden, if they were hidden somewhere? Yes, in the ofs. In the ofs. Do you see that? The 3. So most people saw 3, right? How many of you guys saw 3 the first time and the second time mostly? The Fs were hidden in the ofs. Now, how does this relate to subvocalization? Subvocalization is your inner talk. Sub meaning like a submarine, under, vocal, speech. It's your inner under speech. Have you ever noticed when you're reading something, even when you just did it in the beginning of the session, you hear that inner voice reading along with you? You hear that voice? Hopefully it's your own voice. It's not like somebody else's voice in there. The reason why it's a challenge is because if you have to say all the words in order to understand them, you can only read as fast as you could speak. That means your reading speed is limited to your talking speed, but not your thinking speed. How many of you listen to podcasts or audiobooks and you do it at higher speeds? Right? And because you can understand it at those higher speeds, especially after you train yourself to learn it at 1.5 or 2x or 2.5 or 3x, you can understand it, but nobody could speak that fast, right? Now, when I went through finished files, result of years of scientific study, the reason why it was difficult is I had you read it out loud, right? Because it creates in psychology something called a scotoma. It's a blind spot. You go finished files, result of, you're saying it out loud, of, what letter does it sound like? Of. If you're reading it with sound, V, right? Finished files result of, and then you think it's a, you see the F clearly because you're reading it, but you're perceiving a V, and it's just an exercise. And this is how we do everything with the limitless mind system. Is we use these examples to kind of change your learning pattern, your neurological networks, to give you experience instead of just lecturing, right? That's why we do all these exercises all the time, because I want, if you can't do it, you don't know it, right? And so subvocalization is a challenge, and because you're saying the words, that's what keeps you reading it slow. And let's back up. Do you need to say New York City in order to understand what New York City is? Computer. No, right? Because you've seen these words tens of thousands of times. It's just like if you're driving and you see a street sign like stop. I guarantee you, none of you say the word stop all the time in your head. But do you comprehend what it means? 100%, right? 95% of the words you read on a regular basis are like that stop sign. And they're what they call sight words. Words you know by sight because you've seen it so much, you don't have to pronounce it by sound. Like one of the fastest readers in U.S. history is John F. Kennedy. And he was said to have read 6 newspapers every morning with 1 cup of coffee. Now, I know for some of you are thinking like, wow, it would take me 6 cups of coffee just to get through one newspaper, right? But he knew the importance of reading as a leader, that he actually brought speed reading trainers into the White House to train his staff, right? He's also on record as having one of the fastest speeches in U.S. history. But let's say he could talk, he was said to have read anywhere from 800 to 1,200 words a minute. Now think about that, 800 to 12, does that person have an advantage over someone who reads 200 words a minute? If you could read 4, 5, 6 times faster and understand, right? He was said to have read around 800 to 1,200 words a minute, because it varies depending on what you're reading, right? Like if you don't speak French, speed reading French is not going to help, right? If you're reading something very technical, you have to slow down. But the idea here is you don't want to read everything at 200 words a minute, which is what everyone does. But it's like Scott Flansburgh and I were talking about, going out and playing golf. It's like if you have to use the same club every single time, you're not going to be effective, because there's different clubs for different scenarios, right? Same thing with reading. You can read something slowly, but some things you go more rapidly. And having that variance, having that adaptability gives you so much power, right? In game theory, for those of you who know game theory, whether it's chess or whatever, those who have the most options will always win, everything else being equal. Do you have too much to read, but too little time? Are your shelves full of books that you haven't read yet and become shelf help, not self-help? And that's why I created the Kwik Reading course. 15 minutes a day, 21 days will absolutely transform your life. Just go to kwikbrain.com/reading. Use the code podcast15 and you'll get instant access. And so subvocalization, if let's say John F. Kennedy could speak at 300 words a minute, which is pretty fast, but he could read at 1,000 words a minute, there's 700 words per minute he's just not pronouncing, right? Now, where did this subvocalization come from? Well, it came from when we learned how to read. Remember when you were 5, 6, 7, whenever you said, then you had to read out loud, because the teacher needed to know you're reading and pronouncing the words correctly. But later on, teacher probably got tired of hearing you and said, remember this phrase? Read silently to yourself. Read quietly to yourself. And that's where you took that external, you were saying it out loud, and you internalized it. Because in order for me to understand it, I have to hear it. If not out loud, then inside my mind. All right? Now, you don't have to say the words, because most words also are filler words. And, there, because, the, right? These are filler words. Or even it's like reading and saying things is like, nobody reads and says punctuation marks. You don't read ... semicolon, ... question mark, ... exclamation mark. You don't do that, right? But think about it. Those are just symbols. The punctuation marks are symbols. The words are symbols too, right? So the idea here is reducing subvocalization. I'll give you a couple of tips, but tips don't really work that well, but I'll give you a couple maybe works. One of the ways, you might want to count when you read. So imagine you're reading something and you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in your mind out loud, or in your mind or silently, 3, 4, 5, and keep on counting. Because the idea here is you can't read what's in front of you and count at the same time, right? So you have to do, and after a while, it'll be very confusing for a lot of people. So I think they're better skills that take training to unravel that. You know what a lot of becoming a limitless learner is? It's unlearning. Unlearning the bad rote memory. You have to repeat something 100 times in order to understand it, when you could just do it once or twice. Reading slowly, all that's just unlearning bad habits, right? So the people that are going to really earn the most are people who could learn, unlearn, and relearn, right? And take that new learnings and put it into action. There is no greater superpower in today's day and age, because you could apply that towards everything: medicine, marketing, money, everything gets easier. Subvocalization. Some people will bite on something when they read, because some people will subvocalize moving their lips while they read, and it'll kind of break that pattern. You could try it if you like. It could work in some cases, but really I'd be doing a disservice. Tips are different than trainings, right? But in the time we have, those are tips. Fourth obstacle, and I'll go through a solution: regression. Regression is the act of, have you ever read something, you found yourself rereading words or rereading a whole line? Has anyone ever done that before? That's regression. Regression is back skipping. And you do this more than you realize you're doing it. I sat in on studies where subjects are reading off of a screen, and they have a technology where they could shine a light and then it reflects to where their focal point is, like where their line of sight is. They use this in advertising, television commercials, because they want to see where your line of sight is so they could put their product in your view, right? Kind of makes sense. There's a lot of going on behind the scenes for neuromarketing, which we advise people on also as well. But the idea here is when people are tested using this technology, they'll see their eyes go forward and then back, forward, 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 and back. So we'll do something called back skipping. So if you spend a third of your time rereading words, that's lost. That's going to slow down your speed. And it doesn't even help you with your comprehension. I mean, imagine we have a screen here. We're all together here watching a movie you're really excited about watching. But somebody is off to the side with, let's say, a child with a remote control, and every 30 seconds, this little child rewinds it. Every 30 seconds, rewinds. Every 30 seconds, rewinds. Right? Goes back. Goes back. How would you feel about that experience? Movie you really want to watch, and somebody just keeps on rewinding, rewinding, rewinding. Yeah, it would be annoying, right? Would it help? It would take longer to watch that movie? Yes. And would it help your comprehension at all? Not at all, because it would break up the rhythm and the flow of the information, right? So we do this unconsciously. And then the fifth obstacle to effective reading is belief. Because if you believe you're a slow reader, if you believe you're stupid, if you believe you're not focused, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to reach that potential, all right? So these are 5 obstacles to effective reading. Let me give you a couple of tips right now. So what I want you to do is, first thing is a visual pacer will help you read. Now, if you're just joining us, the exercise you need to do is have a base rate, is to pick a book that you're reading, put a dot in the margin, time yourself for 60 seconds, and then put a mark in the margin where you left off, count the number of lines, right? Because I'm about to give you some speed reading, quick reading tips, but how do you know if it works unless you have some kind of gauge, a baseline, right? One of the keys to reading faster is using a visual pacer. A visual pacer is you underlining what you read. If you're reading on a tablet, you're not touching the screen or you're not touching the print book, you're just right above it. You can use your finger, you can use a pen, a highlighter, right? A mouse if you're reading on the computer, whatever. A visual pacer, you're not skipping anything. Because how many of you have taken a traditional speed reading class before? Traditional speed reading has been more skipping words, scanning, skimming, right? And you get the gist of what you read. But as a memory trainer, I want you to understand and remember what you're reading. Like we train a lot of attorneys, a lot of financial advisors, a lot of doctors. You do not want your doctor to get the gist of what she's reading, right? So the idea here is you're going margin to margin, you're just underlining the words. And this is going to help boost your reading speed because you're not going to regress, because it's going to help your focus, because you're using your finger when you read will pull you through the information as opposed to your attention being pulled apart, and it'll help you from back skipping and regressing, right? You're not going to go consciously back when your finger is pulling you forward. Now, a few reasons why this works. Number one, children naturally do this. Like we have an 18-month-old and we read to him every day, and he naturally will touch the words and underline because he knows it helps him to focus. It's interesting too, because children, our son, 18 months, I'll go like, look at my keys, look at my keys. And what will that child do? Grab them. Because he associates seeing and feeling, right? So number one, children do it naturally. Number two, you do it. Like no one here read with their finger unless they've gone through some of our training before, right? Those who reading 500 words, 800 words, I saw 1,000 words per minute. But you use your finger when you read. You didn't do it when I asked you to, but when I asked you to count the number of lines that you read, what did you all do? You went 1, 2 with your finger because you know unconsciously it's a better way to focus, right? Why not use that to read and just instead of just counting lines? But the reason why you do it, number one, children do it. Number two, you do it. Number three, your eyes are attracted to motion. Like if Dr. Bruce just ran across the screen and nobody would pay attention to me because your eyes are attracted to motion. Think about it as a hunter-gatherer thousands of years ago, right? You're in a bush, you're hunting lunch. Like it's a rabbit or you're hunting lunch, maybe it's a carrot, depending on your diet. If the bush next to you moves, you have to look because it's your survival. Number one, it could be lunch, or number two, you could be lunch, right? You are trained to look at what moves. So when your finger's going across the page, your eyes are going to sync with your finger because you have to focus on what moves most in your vision, in your field of vision. Does that make sense? All right. And then the last reason I'll give you, because adults, we want to know why in order to do the what. Start with why, Simon Sinek, right? And it's how your nervous system is set up. Without going into too much detail, certain senses work very closely together. Like, have you ever tasted a great piece of fruit, like a peach? Like, not something that's been sprayed and waxed in a grocery store for like 6 months, but like something right off the vine or at a farmer's market? Ever tasted a great piece of fruit? It's amazing, right? I'm like, my mouth is watering even thinking about that. You're not, here's an update. You're not actually tasting the peach. You're smelling the peach. But your sense of smell and taste are so closely linked in your nervous system, you can't often tell the difference. You know the difference if you're sick. If your nose is congested, what does some food taste like? It just tastes bland, right? It doesn't have any flavor. Because a lot of your tongue can't actually process the taste buds what a peach tastes like. You're actually smelling the peach. So just as your sense of smell and taste are closely linked in your nervous system that you can't tell the difference, so is your sense of sight and your sense of touch. That's why when I go like this to our son, look at the keys, I say, look, he grabs them because the sense of sight and touch are so closely linked. People, after using their finger for a while, will say to me anecdotally, I don't know what it is. I'm reading faster, but I also feel more in touch with my reading, right? The language kind of gives it away. In fact, if somebody loses their sense of sight, how do you read? Braille, right? Sense of touch. So these are all the reasons I'm encouraging you to use your finger while you read. Now do this, shake out your hands, put your pen down, your book down, and I want you to do this exercise. Remember I mentioned educational kinesiology where you're doing this, you're moving around a little bit. I always do this before I read and study. You could do it too, feel free. This helps integrate your left and right brain. So your left brain, logic, right? Words, sounds. Your right brain, emotions, visualization. So if you can integrate that, you're seeing the word and getting the experience. You're seeing it and feeling it. You're not just hearing it and seeing it. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to put your hands out, your index fingers up, and I want you to just look at the top of your index fingers, and I want you to do an infinity sign, right? This is all about becoming limitless. You know what the infinity sign is? It's like an 8 on its side. And I want you, without moving your head, just follow the top of your fingertips with your eyes. And go slow. The key is to go slow. That's the integration. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. I do a lot of training for the military. They have that phrase when it comes to even firearms, slow. So what I want you to do is you're interlacing your fingers, your index fingers are up, you're focusing on the tips of your finger, and you're just moving it as an infinity sign. And you're not moving your head. Some of you have to slow down even more. Slow. And this is an exercise not only integrating your left and right brain, it's an exercise of training you to look at your finger, and it's an exercise, how many of you feel it in your vision? It's an exercise for improving your field of sight, your peripheral vision. And you can go now the opposite way. Some of you are holding your breath. It's a lot easier if you breathe. So again, you're doing the limitless sign. Even if you look at my book, there's an infinity sign. If you look at it, it looks like DNA. A lot of thought went into that cover. There's deep 7-layer meanings. All right, shake out your hands. And you could do this, just palm your eyes. They do this in yoga, right? Just kind of warm up your hands. All right, so they're warm. And then just gently place them over your eyes. Don't press on your eyes, just cup your eyes. And just breathe. Close your eyes, just breathe normal. All right, what I want everybody to do now is pick up your book and don't pick up where you left off yet. I just want you to practice. Just practice. Pick up anywhere. You can open up even to a random page. I want you to just, in fact, try this. Here's a hack. Turn your book upside down so you don't have to comprehend it. And I want you just to practice using your hand and going left to right, or if you're reading in a different language, it goes right to left. You could do that too. Same principle applies. And again, you're not moving your head. You're just following your finger with the eyes. You're not touching the page. You're not touching the screen. You're just going back and forth, and just get used to what that feels like. What does that feel like? Just breathe normally. Going left to right, and just practice following your finger across the page. Okay, stop. Now, that should have felt a little weird. Well, I'll put it, share how it felt. Feels familiar? Wow, that's great. How did it feel? You still comprehended upside down? That's amazing. Weird, right? Odd, strange. And the idea here is we're activating neuroplasticity. If everything is so easy, you're probably not learning something. I'll say that again. It's just like a workout. If you're working out and it's too easy, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. And so a lot of, especially when it's technical material and everything else, whenever you're learning something, there has to be a certain level of challenge in order to affect change in neuroplasticity. So what I want you to do now is I want you to pick up where you left off, and I'm going to time you for 60 seconds. All right, don't start yet. I want you to pick up where the second mark is, and I'm going to have you read for 60 seconds using your finger this time, and have your finger guide you through. And then when I say stop, you're going to put a mark in the margin, count the number of lines, and share it if you like. Are you ready? And begin. All right, and stop. Put a mark in the margin. And this was your second run through. Yeah, you're doing it right side up if you read this. And count the number of lines that you just read. If you want to share your before and after, that would be great. Either your lines per minute or your words per minute. 12 to 19, 18 to 26, 21 to 28. Wow, big jumps. I'm like speed reading all these answers here. 300 words per minute to 430 words per minute. 20 lines per minute to 30 lines per minute. 35 to 57. That's amazing. So the idea here, many of you improve if you do the mental math, because I'm a student of Scott's. It's about 25, 50%. Some of you doubled your reading speed. And that's after like 1 minute of practice. And so this is the first stage. But this, after you practice, especially for a couple of weeks, there is an upward limit though, because you're only going to be able to go as fast as you could subvocalize, right? And so that's why, and unfortunately we can't in one day overcome with subvocalization, but it'll get you to a point where a lot of you could double your reading speed and where you could read as fast as you could talk, right? It's the different techniques that take training each day, exercises to be able to reduce that subvocalization, to be able to unlock, many of our students on average, We have over a 300% increase in reading speed after 21 days. For those of you going through quick reading, you probably validate that with better comprehension. All right, doubled. Amazing. Why not touch this page? You can touch a page if you want, but I guarantee you when you go faster, there's this thing called friction. And I've set so many books on fire as fast as I read. So just for me, it's easier in the beginning just to not touch the page if that's possible. All right. Did everyone find this session valuable? Yes? For reading? Amazing. All right. And that's just, by the way, what I just shared was what was on day 1 of the quick reading program. The next 20 days is really going into all these other exercises that get you reading forwards and backwards and doing all the kinds of amazing things.